Tommy, I'm worried. I thought we had, over the last 11 episodes, I thought we had covered all the things that made me feel anxious, but now I have stumbled across a resource that reminds me that there is an entire world of things to be anxious about, and it starts inside your own brain.
As all things do. All right.
This week, and this is just, I'll keep it brief, this week is just a siren call to remind you to get your anxiety checked out. Why? Go ahead and ask me why.
Pete, why?
Because our bodies and minds are designed to deal with short-term threats, Tommy. This comes from Dr. Steve Levine. He's a board-certified psychiatrist. When chronically stressed by anxiety, our protective mechanisms turn against us and result in damage, including important brain communication circuits. And so I just wanted to run down a couple of them to remind you why you should keep your anxiety in check. And I want to see if you have any trouble with any of these things. Is that fair?
Okay.
Right,
yeah, I think so. I'm ready.
All right. Number one, do you have trouble concentrating?
Yep.
Okay, check that one off the list. Totally on the list is you have trouble concentrating. Anxiety feels so overwhelming that it causes you to impaired thinking or lack of focus. Now, let me just tell you, that is the least of your worries. You may, number two, you may forget how to calm down. Do you have a problem with that?
Forget? Yes, I have in the past. Yes.
Yeah, that's a sign. Tom, you're in the right place on this show.
Am I?
Let's just say that. Then we've got through some others that I'll bust through here. You may develop other mental health issues. That's, I think, goes without saying. It can lead to depression. It can lead to substance abuse. It can lead to all sorts of things there. Then we get to the things that really mess me up. Your brain will lay down anxious neural pathways.
Oh, no.
Oh, I don't care for that at all.
Stop laying down those pathways, brain.
Stop that. And you know what? This is the thing. If I'm hitting myself in the head with my right hand, I can control that. I can stop hitting myself in the right hand, or I can restrain myself in some way, shape, or form to keep myself. Laying down anxious neural path, I can't see that. I can't feel it. Oh, I'm not comfortable with that. Brains are similar to muscles in that the more you use specific neural pathways, the more strengthened those routes become, says Bridget Gordon, who is a psychiatric doctor of nursing.
Sure, I know
This
Bridget.
is true for an anxious individual's brains as well. The more anxious you are about something, or anxious about many little things in general, the more your brain will go back to those same anxious thoughts.
No, that's not how I want it to work. I want my brain to be like, this is nonsense, so I will bar this. Instead, they're making a super highway of anxiety.
Yes, and this is actually making me upset at brain. Number 5, your initial anxiety can lead to more intense anxiety. Yeah, we kind of saw that one coming. You can't sleep. Yeah, you may become stuck on high alert. This is another one that not only affects your brain, but affects the rest of your body. Your adrenals get amped, and you end up running the pipes a little hot. They say, this comes from Erin Carpenter, LCSW, says, yeah, she's good. Another word for this is that your arousal in your brain is high. This is not sexual arousal. They're careful to clarify that, but psychological arousal. This means your brain's on high alert for danger, scanning the environment for possible threats. This all happens on a subconscious level, of course, so you may not be aware of it happening, but you will be aware that over time, you'll become more reactive to stressors and find it difficult to come back to calm baseline. And having your adrenals amped like that can lead to all kinds of autoimmune issues. And we've talked about autoimmune over the last couple of episodes, where your body starts to attack itself. And that leads to number 8, your cells begin to malfunction. Can lead to stem cell malfunction, creating a very rigid connection between two brain areas, the hippocampus and amygdala, which lead to your brain being in a constant state of fight or flight. I'm exhausted.
This goes back and connects to the very first cold open you delivered on our very first episode, where you brought to light the fact that there are cells that carry anxiety.
That's right. And you reminded everybody we're not talking about a pitch meeting.
We are not. We're talking about cells with a C. That's the worst part.
That's right.
So these cells carry anxiety, and the brain's like, oh, you having trouble with traffic? Here's your HOV lane to make sure that all the anxieties get through to where they need to. As I said then, and I say it again, I do not care for it.
But here's the biggest one, Tommy.
Oh, there's more.
This is the one that hurts me the most. Parts of your brain will start to shrink. Now, we're gentlemen in our Middle Ages. We don't need to talk about anything more that is shrinking
That's
in
right.
or around our bodies.
Like our penis. Welcome to What's That Smell, a sometimes funny podcast about humans and their anxieties. I'm Tommy Metz III.
And I'm Pete Wright.
And every week, we drag out one of our deepest, darkest anxieties into the light to share it, learn about it,
and hopefully laugh about it with all of you. Reach out. Send us the story of your anxieties to somethingstinky@rashpixel.fm. That's somethingstinky@rashpixel.fm. And with that, Tommy,
yeah,
it's the last episode of our first season.
Holy cow. Episode 12. Can you believe that we made more episodes than 2? I, for one, cannot.
It's been quite a ride. This has been a fun experiment, a grand experiment, and we have gotten some fantastic feedback from folks. We always planned on doing a first season with 12 episodes and just see if we could come up with enough anxieties to talk about that wouldn't make us sound like total lunatics. I think we did that.
Well, we did the first part, yes.
We did the first part. Yeah, well, I don't know. Reputation be damned, Tom. And so our plan is to, we're going to take a little break. And part of that is because, we've started this email thing. We want people to send us their anxieties. And we thought we would take a stab at a season 2 where we open it up a little bit and talk less about ourselves, or certainly about ourselves and the anxieties we share with you wonderful listeners. And we've got a bunch of them that have been really fun to see come across our inbox. So we thought we would take today and that we would do a little bit of a retrospective.
Oh, a flashback episode.
It's like a little flashback episode.
I love it.
Which seems ridiculous now that I say it out loud. We've only done 11 other episodes to even think about, but I feel like...
Pete, who can even remember when we started? Oh, decades ago, Lifetime Achievement Awards on their way. Yep.
But the real thing about this, Tom, and the reason I like this episode 12 plan we've concocted here is because I have definitely changed or have noticed some new behavior in myself as a result of talking about our anxieties each week with you. Mm-hmm. And I think that's a good thing to talk about.
One of the biggest things that I've gotten back feedback-wise from this podcast is it's a very fertile topic to talk about. And people want to it was Pete's idea. It was your idea, Pete. I'm telling you that just sort of having a lighthearted conversation about anxiety. There's a lot of people that want to be a part of that, which is fantastic, which is thrilling because we didn't know if we'd just be doing this for 2 or 3 of our friends. And it turns out there's like 4 or 5 of our friends. So
we do have a couple of bits of follow-up from some of our past episodes. But before we dig into the specific episodes, I want to ask you, Tom, as you look back on our conversations, as you look back on our opportunities to share our anxieties, do you have a favorite? Do you have a number one anxiety that you have really enjoyed talking about in this particular show?
My number one is not from me. It's from you.
Oh, no.
It's the one, I believe it was episode 3, where you silence buried deep, something like that. Either way, I talked about my fear of silence.
Uh-huh.
And you talked about your fear of being buried alive. That escalated quick. On my end, the idea of me talking about my fear of silence led to a large number of my friends over the next, because we tape a little bit ahead of time. Yeah. So I forget exactly what has been released, but there was 2 weeks where I would go out to social events with friends and they would take me aside and we'd start talking and they'd go, yeah. And then just stare at me. Or a couple of them actually went crazy. And because they know exactly my triggers to freak me out. So I both didn't care and cared very much for that.
That's my favorite story.
Yeah, I got tons of people just sort of staring at me because that was their big funny joke. And I did love it.
So funny, friends.
So funny. But then the other part of that episode, which I love so much, is a more than a few people said, oh, it's just so interesting. And then Pete started talking about, being buried alive. Couldn't finish that episode because it was too scary. But anyways, Pete, you might, on episode 3, you might have, for a good reason, the least listened to fully episode of an anxiety, because your buried alive
about
thing,
15 minutes.
Oh, it tapped into a lot of, that is not a rare anxiety to have, apparently. That the idea of having someone tell you slowly what it's like to be buried alive and to roll around in that anxiety, a lot of people happily weren't having it. So I guess that would be mine. How about yours?
I certainly have not gone back to listen to that episode.
I
would say that I do have one of those episodes where my friends have been trolling me, though, and that is episode 5, where we dig into it was Pam and the Fashion Police,
right?
And so I can't go to a social engagement now without somebody looking down at what I'm wearing and saying, "Are those hemp pants?"
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I assume the answer should always be absolutely.
Well, I've got 3 pairs of them, Tom.
Of course you do. What are you going to do? Not wear them?
Good. Exactly. Yeah. You think a podcast is going to keep me from wearing my favorite damn pants? No way. Episode 1, for me was, I don't know, it's a little bit of a strange thing to talk about, because I really didn't know where we were going with that episode. Like, I had that idea. That was the idea that inspired the name of this podcast, which I should add, nobody liked at all.
What's that smell?
Nobody liked that? But I'm sticking with it. Even you didn't like it. It took forever to get you bought into that. Still not crazy about it. But remind people of the anxiety that you're talking about. Right. Now, the anxiety that I was talking about was the particles. When you smell something, the particles of whatever substance you're smelling are actually going into your nose. And of course,
people didn't care for that either. Yeah, that's right.
Right. I have gotten so many comments about that particular anxiety. So it's gratifying to know that so many people connected with that one, that not only was I late to talk about it, but I was woefully wrong about feeling so alone and having it. So that was particularly gratifying.
Can I jump in with a quick example of that? A friend of the show, Netta, she has a newborn-ish. I think it's pretty much a newborn. Either way, she said she's a huge fan of the podcast. Just listened to the episode, which was number 1, of smells being real and real things going into your nose. While I was listening, I was changing a diaper. Thank you for ruining my life.
Yeah.
Great.
Yeah.
So
and
you're welcome,
child's
Netta.
Disgusting. Just
thank you.
Mess. Hotbed of toxic particles going in your face all the time. Sorry. The second episode where I talked about cardiophobia, and that's where we kind of unpacked my very first serious panic attack while I was behind the wheel with my friend Ted, who we'll call Ted. And as it turns out, the feedback I got was directly from Ted, who was shocked that happened, because as it turns out, I never came clean.
Know.
I never told him this was going on. Because he was dealing with heart stuff in his family that very weekend. And so he was quite surprised that had happened. And second, he was pretty pissed off that I didn't pull off sooner as the tunnel vision starts creeping in at 65 miles an hour.
Because you're the driver?
Yeah, it's good to have those kinds of things out in the open. Thank you, podcast. That's great. But I will say, a listener sent me a resource from therapist Jody Amon, who had 2 things to add. And first was
I know Jody.
A mantra. She says, you'll know if you know Jody, she says this all the time. When you feel an attack coming on, you start saying to yourself, "I'm safe." And you say it over and over and over, because those words are particular trigger words for us in our brains. And I guess maybe they lay down new neurotransmitters for us. I don't know, but "I'm safe" is a particularly strong phrase that you say to yourself over and over and over. And then keep moving. Apparently, she says, doing something changes the chemicals in the brain. It releases the GABA hormone that puts the brakes on the adrenaline. And so when she says do something, she means literally that. Move around, walk around, run, go for a jog, breathe deeply, and keep your body moving. Keep your blood pumping. So I thought that was an interesting bit of follow-up.
That's great. I'm safe. I'm safe over and over again.
I'm safe over and over. When I feel those panic attacks. If you don't have a Xanax in your pocket, I guess.
Sure. I remember that on episode 4, we talked about you feeling like an imposter, me not wanting to go to the bathroom in front of people. I feel like when we compare anxieties, you're dealing with like being buried. I don't know. I feel like such an idiot. But either way, yeah, I don't like going to the bathroom in front of people. Sorry, I love going to the bathroom. I was reached out by 2 friends, I will not mention their names, that actually do suffer from paruesis, which is the fear of going number 1, not number 2.
Right.
Which is interesting because I remember during the episode I had said that I had never met nor would understand anyone that involved that part. But yeah, it is a big thing and I feel bad about taking it lightly. She did say that her other friend, who I will remain nameless, knows this about her. And every time she goes to the restroom at her friend's house, he keeps yelling in from the kitchen, "I can hear you peeing." Which he thinks is hysterical. She does not. But more importantly, I have a very big update about episode 4. At one point, if you'll remember, I said that with the research, as with most anxieties, it comes from a past traumatic event, as we've already talked about.
Sure.
And I said that nothing really traumatic had happened to me while I was potty training. So clearly I just came up with it on my own.
Right.
Well, Pete, I did a little research. And by research, I mean, I got a call from friend of the show, my mother. And she reminded me of a story that I did not remember at all because I was too young. It turns out that when she was potty training me, she had bought, as was fashionable back then I was born in 75. And so it would have been, mid to late 70s. She bought a doll. She doesn't remember what it's called, but it was supposed to pee. It's a doll that looks like a boy and you feed it through its mouth like water, sure. And then it pees.
Yeah, you
one of
squeeze
those
it or something. Yeah,
probably Tommy pees a lot or something, right? Ugh, why would I say that? Why would I bring up my nickname from college? Anyways, we're in the bathroom together. She closes the door, and I have to go. So she goes, "Here's how it goes," and she feeds the doll a bunch of water, and she squeezes it, and nothing's happening. And she's sort of squeezing it, and nothing's happening. So she takes off its shirt and its pants. Nothing's happening. She's squeezing it. Anyways, flash forward as she says, she's now beating the doll in the chest, desperately trying to make it use the restroom to show me how it's done. And while this is happening, unbeknownst to her at the time, I just sort of walk over to the corner and pee on the floor. Hey-o! So while I'm seeing my mother beat something that kind of looks like me, I went ahead and took care of business. So A, I'm clearly an entrepreneur, but B, maybe part of me took that as some sort of a signal of this going to the bathroom in front of other people stuff. Not that great. So that might be traumatic enough. I'm not sure. But thanks, Mom.
I'm going to jump forward a little bit to a very recent episode, which was the one about where I talk about my needle phobia.
Right.
We talked about the things that I really, I don't really care to visit again. We talk about the lakes and rivers. I don't need to be a water person. I'm really okay. My life is fine. I don't need to be exposed to that. But dealing with needles is something that's very important.
Yes.
Because at some point, I'm going to be jabbed.
You're going to be jabbed, Pete.
I'm going to be jabbed. You're going to be jabbed. And I got some advice from a therapist who is also a friend of the show and weirdly likes what we're doing here, who says I should really try eye movement desensitization and reprocessing. Have you heard about this? EMDR?
I have very recently just heard about this.
It was originally developed by Francine Shapiro, who released this in 1989. She published her research in the Journal of Traumatic Stress. It was she had noted that when experiencing a traumatic event, her eyes were involuntarily moving rapidly, and so she developed a whole therapy and practice around post-traumatic stress disorder related to eye movement, and that it has, if you feel a particular traumatic response coming on, EMDR can help reprogram you to not experience it as such. And I am planning on moving forward to do a little bit of exposure work to clean this out. I need to feel better about needles, so I'm going to take this one on. So thank you so much for the guidance, and I'm looking forward to it. I'm not, and that's a total lie.
It sounds terrible. I'm sure. But can you give a little bit of an example of what that entails?
Well, I can't. I haven't done it yet, Tom.
Oh, okay. It's it's using your eyes and following a certain pattern with your eyes in order to. Yep. Okay, got it.
That's
Great.
My understanding, and so we'll try that probably this summer, and maybe we can talk a little bit more about EMDR as and that experience next season. Here's
That's
hoping.
really exciting, Pete. That's fantastic. Do you think that talking about it? Oh no, obviously, by definition, talking about it had your therapist bring it up.
Not even my therapist. How's that? It's just random.
Just random therapist
said, "Hey, you need to." Well, it's not that random, but it is it's actually a good opportunity, and it's time to take care of this one. This is one that I care about. This is one I would surely like to deal with the medical community in a way that isn't so fraught with passing out.
Sure. That's so great.
It. Yeah,
that's wonderful. Fun. I actually have a lot of the sort of a similar experience in how I'm changing my life, based from an earlier episode 5.
Mm-hmm.
It's exciting for me because as you're sort of getting this help done, or you're planning to in the future, you remember that I talked about that lake in Hideaway Lake, where my grandparents used to live. And we used to play lake tag because it was so dark inside the lake, you couldn't see what was happening. I was recently told by someone that they have closed it, and they closed it a long time ago. There's no more lake tag in that because they found out it had too much sewage in it from the surrounding houses. And so how is this helpful?
Yeah,
it's because I'm never going to sleep in, I'm never going to swim in that lake ever again. Is that the same kind of thing as you going to get help because of a therapist? I'm not going to swim around in sewage during the summers anymore. A, because my grandparents passed away, and B, apparently it was closed with sewage like while I was growing up. Like we just stopped swimming in there, and none of them told us. There's a lot of things that my mother is telling me later in life, all because of this podcast. Oh, that's what it is, Pete. I'm learning to know that my mother is a liar. We know from episode 1 that your episode is a liar. Now we know from episode 12, so is mine. Mothers are liars, and we love them. Thanks, Mom.
Happy Mother's Day, everybody.
Happy Mother's Day. The one that I'm most, I guess, proud of? I don't know if that's a thing you say. I don't remember what episode it was, but I know it was called Woomph. There it is, because we love puns. Episode 7. That is the idea of me in my history of having trouble going to sleep, and being alone at night. I guess that's the barest I've laid myself out in front of everyone about that. There's very few people that I've ever talked to, and to make the choice to talk about it with you and to all of these people, I do take some pride on. I'm glad that I was able to do that. And I'm really glad that there were some people that got back to me saying that they used to have trouble like that, or still even do to this point. It does make me, the definition of that anxiety was being alone or feeling alone. To not feel that way, made some of a difference. So I'm very glad to have had such a weirdly public place to sort of get that off my chest. And I appreciate it.
It's a funny space to do that in a way that is both super public and super intimate.
Yeah.
And I agree with you. I mean, I think that was a interesting episode because it was so easy to think about this as something that is relegated to childhood, but it still had such resonance for you. And that I think that was that was really important on a number of levels. And I have gotten so much feedback from folks who feel like who were able to really truly resonate with that feeling, with that experience, that sensory experience of the TV turning off. I mean, it was just it was a great image, and I too am proud of you because I know that one was a tough one. We've had a more fun maybe than we should have with our titles as the season went on. I have to say, I don't think there's a title I'm more proud of than just last episode, episode 11, Eat, Pray, Run. That delights me on a level that I just can't. I can't even with you people. I just can't.
Your idea of changing the spelling of the word pray made the entire thing work for me. I'm a fan. I love the puns. I love the Pete Wright puns. I'm good.
So good. And also, I thought that you were going to say you were most proud of your, the anxiety you were most proud of was ants. And I am super proud of you knowing how terrible that one was for you. But
that was
just ugly.
Am I still screaming about ants? I feel like sometimes I'm worried that I'm still going on a rant about ants. An ant rant. No, that was, it was definitely leading up to that. That was the one that I could have talked about in episode 1, but we definitely wanted to. It is funny how many times my fear of ants came up in episode 1 through 10. just basically, just sort of
Yeah.
off the side. So yeah, I'm glad that everyone officially knows that ants
It's
are
out
the
there.
worst.
Yep.
Yeah, it's my best thing.
We'll never know what could have been.
Have you learned anything from your experience with this season, like talking about anxieties, researching anxieties? Has it changed anything about your world?
I thought that I knew the basic idea that what you are worried about, you're not alone. A lot of people worry about them. And I think that maybe I accidentally just sort of put that as a platitude and put that in my sort of chamber of platitudes to sort of basically forget of everyone goes through this. And using this podcast to share anxieties, to talk with you, and we're getting from the feedback that we've gotten has really made that actually come true in a way that it's no longer a platitude, is actually really true. And there are people that want to hear about this and want to share. And it only helps, of course, to hear that you are not alone in these kind of things and that other people feel all of this same kind of struggle. It means the world to me, as I hope that it means the world to other people.
Yeah, I think so. For me, anxieties are hard. And I think talking about them week after week has really cemented that. They're hard to talk about, and even as much sort of enormous fun as I'm having doing the show with you, it causes a deep strain of meta anxiety to actually talk about them out loud on a podcast, right? It's
Really?
the anxiety above the anxiety. That will people relate? Will they like it? Will they like
Oh,
me?
that. Sure.
Like all of
course.
these things are just so stupid. But anxieties, when talked about, get easier. And I think for me,
Yes.
I got a couple of lessons that have really stuck out. As a result of this show, I find I'm a hair trigger to talk about anxiety in any company. I'll talk about this. I'm so annoying at parties, but it turns out that, as you say, because we're not alone, that's a surprisingly sort of interesting way to connect at a different and I think deeper level. Being able to say, hey, that thing you're doing right now, it's making me anxious, and I'm taking ownership of my fear by talking about it. I'm finding new ways to accept myself in the face of what I perceive as my shortcomings.
Right.
And I'm finding it makes me more honest with people that I relate with in the world. And frankly, my God, I'm having the funniest conversations with people. I was so worried when we started this idea that we would be heralded as straight up just loons, and that no one would get it, and that it wouldn't be of any interest. Dead wrong. Oh my God, I have this thing or I listened to that show you just did, and I have to tell you, or getting emails from the doctor who says he can't watch his patients blow their noses with handkerchiefs when they're crying because he knows they're going to subconsciously wipe their eyes with the same hanky, and he'll be obsessed with it all day. Like, that's a great story. The woman actually witnessing herself developing anxiety over skin diseases and reporting it to us in real time as it happens. These are anxiety gems, man. They are gems. And it comes with such deep satisfaction that these people are having fun with us as we learn to laugh about these things together, because we're not laughing at anybody anymore about their anxieties. Not
Why
at
would
all.
we?
No, not at all.
No, and what you just said about having fun together, that I don't want to speak for you, Pete, but I think that was the idea that you came up with for this podcast, is the idea that bringing out anxieties into the light, but then also laughing at them a bit, that's important. I mean, anxiety is serious. No one on this podcast would ever argue that. Anxiety is incredibly serious, can have a really big impact on your life. But anxiety is also, by definition, worrying about something that might happen, that hasn't happened. And as a result, let's laugh at it. Screw you, dumb brains, with your weird superhighways and your cells of anxiety. We don't need any of that. So we're dealing with it. It's a part of our lives. Some of us don't care for ants. That's fine. We live with it. But yeah, talk about it, bring it up, laugh about it, make fun of it, all that stuff. That takes the power away from anxiety. Anxiety has way too much power over all of us, myself very, very much included, if not at the top of the list. And so, yeah, it really does help a lot to talk about it and have other people be like, yeah, that is funny, and bring up stuff. I mean, it means the world to me. It's what I spent most of my childhood not having. And by childhood, I would go through high school of not having an ability to just sort of open up about it Had I been able to do this a long time ago, people probably would have said things like, "What? What's a podcast?" Point being, I don't have a time machine, but point being, yes, I think the idea of that taking a light approach to it, which was always sort of supposed to be the idea, I would hope that it gives a little bit more of an avenue to people that aren't as used to talking about it and maybe don't want to get down in the trenches, but instead just want to bring it up, talk about it, poke some holes in it and see. I mean, it's helped me a great deal.
Well, on that point, I think my biggest lesson, I think the surprise lesson that I did not expect out of doing this podcast is that as a result of doing the show, I am more aware of the anxieties of others as a result of talking about my own anxieties, right? So
Okay.
When I notice a behavior that feels familiar, if I see somebody moving a certain way around me, saying certain things, avoiding areas or people, I find myself slowing down, trying to be more patient in situations in which I might otherwise have been angsty. Even if I'm dead wrong, I feel better about myself in trying to be more aware of other people who may be dealing with difficult things, and more willing to be transparent when I'm dealing with those difficult things myself. Like I feel like I'm trying to be more understanding of those hidden kinds of anxieties, the things that we're terrified to talk about that we carry around.
Sure.
In other people, and
you just said,
been a real
and
gift.
more open about your own.
Yeah.
That doesn't make you weirdo, because everyone has anxieties. Yeah,
right.
I think the strength is being vulnerable.
Yeah.
I agree.
This is it's been a real treat trying this little experiment, and I'm excited to see what happens with season 2. We neither of us really know, but we have gotten a number of fantastic things to talk about from you, very generous listeners. Please keep sending them to us, because you are essentially helping us build the program for next season, and we want to continue to try and do good, hopefully sometimes funny things with our own anxieties and with yours.
Right, because we're not done. I still have some more. I know I just did ants. Ants is my top of the list, but that doesn't mean that I'm not still neurotic about other things. So
right. Season 1
I've got
finale. We got a whole new season to prep for. Believe me, we're a bucket of anxieties here. So,
but
perfect.
yes, but you're right that it will be retooled in the way that it'll be a little bit more interactive, and we definitely want to hear from you guys and get more of your feedback and your own, most importantly, your own anxieties, so we can do research and we can work on all those as well.
With that, Tommy, thank you so much for a fantastic first season. This has been a real treat, and I can't wait to jump into season 2.
And Pete, for me, this has been such an incredible experience that I never would have thought I would be a part of, and I'm so proud to be a part of it. And I owe you so much thanks for A, coming up with this idea, B, allowing someone like me to be in front of a mic with my annoying laugh and my terrible penchant for not understanding what we're talking about. And also to actually, Pete, keep this in, please, for the listening audience. The entire reason all of this sounds at all okay is because of my co-host Pete. Pete Wright gets all the credit for making us sound like we're not screaming into a tunnel next to a construction zone with our shoes and socks off, and also with the music and everything. Pete is the technological wizard of this show and had the original creative idea. Pete, you are my hero, and you give me no anxiety. And that is the absolute, that is the what's that smell seal of approval. So thank you, Pete. It is such an honor to be a part of this.
Oh, thank you, Tommy. That's very kind.
No, I just wish I'd meant it. Today's podcast is brought to you by Audible. Get a free audiobook download and 30-day free trial at www.audibletrial.com/scent of a podcast. Over 180,000 titles to choose from for your iPhone and other little squares that fit in your pocket.
You know, I understand how when you hear the number 180,000 titles, that can be pretty overwhelming.
It's a lot.
And you might be tempted to just say, I give up. No, thank you.
I might be.
Nope. Done. I'm done. But we think that listeners of this show, listeners of What's That Smell, are bold and brave and willing to dive into the pool that is all 180,000 titles and share with us your favorite books. You have an assignment. Go over to audibletrial.com/scentofapodcast, browse the library, see if you find some books that are on your own shelves, and share with us your favorite books that we will share with others. We want to hear your favorite books. We want to hear your favorite narrators. We want to know what you are listening to on your commutes. Maybe it has something to do with anxiety. Maybe it doesn't. Maybe you've just made some soup and you need to kill some time. We still want to hear your favorite books from Audible.
Yes, so from now on, let us know when you write in to something stinky at rashpixel.fm. Again, that is RASHPIXEL.fm. That is something stinky at rashpixel.fm. Let us know what you're reading, and you will be a huge star on next season of What's That Smell?
Guys, we don't pay to advertise this show, so we really appreciate you sharing it with others you think would be interested in what we've been doing here. We are not a new show anymore, but still, even during our break, these 5-star reviews in iTunes and Apple Podcasts really help others to discover the show.
And right now, you guys, if a lot of you are WTS superfans, we really appreciate you, and you're about to help us do something very special. Because right now, as you're listening to this, the entire first season of What's That Smell is available for binging. And that means if we get a ton of reviews in there, right now, that will help people find us. They can binge season 1, and then they'll be ready for jump on season 2. And that's the big push that we need to take over the podcast world. So, write your review, give us 5 stars, tell us what you like about it, write into something stinky at rashpixel.fm. Right now is the time. If you've been putting off giving us a review, or if you have an anxiety but you haven't quite gotten into writing us, now is the time. It'll be perfect. It'll help the podcast, you'll be on next season, and we all get to go to heaven together. Correct, Pete?
Oh, I didn't expect to bring it back around that way, Tommy, but still, to everybody, thank you all for joining us this week. Today's tune is Runnin' by Mark Robillard. I'm Pete Wright.
And I'm Tommy Mess III. Thank you so much for downloading. We will be back next season on What's That Smell?